Hello? Good morning. I think the good thing about this passage is it's only 13 verses, and I know last week Phil complained a bit about his passage. I think mine's a bit easier, but it doesn't read terribly well. So I hope you probably, I'm guessing that most of you, like me, when you first read it, think, what on earth was that about? But I hope I will simplify it as we go along. I just want to perhaps if you could move on to the third slide. I think Phil gave us quite a good bit of background, as James did when we started the series on Corinth. But I just thought it was worth saying to begin with that Corinth was quite a promiscuous city and was known as a promiscuous city. It was a Roman colony, and it was rebuilt in about AD 44. And actually, it's a bit like a new town, but already by the time this is written, although it's based on a Greek settlement, it was bigger than Athens. And it was very prosperous. It was a very important place, location, as James explained at the beginning of the series. And they worshipped Aphrodite. That was the main religion there, the goddess of love. But the church was founded in AD 50, so not a long time after that, by Paul. And he stayed there for about 18 months, which was one of the longest times he stayed anywhere, any of the churches he founded. And then he moved on, leaving Apollos to lead the church. And then several letters passed between Paul and the church, backwards and forwards. And this one that we're reading today is only written about 5 or 6 years after the church was founded. And although there probably were some Christians in the church who'd been Christians longer than that, a lot of people in that church would have been new Christians who hadn't been Christians for very long. And in the letter that Paul's writing, he is addressing pastoral concerns and ethical issues in quite a bit of it, and in this passage here, that have been sent to him by the church. So things that they haven't really been able to resolve, and that there are different views. So perhaps I'll just, if we go on one slide, Mark, if that's all right. So I just thought at the beginning of this, I'd kind of raise a question about what young people or young Christians might debate today. Now, as I'm not a young Christian, I don't actually really know the answer to that. I can only say what sort of things perhaps were going on when I was fairly new to the Christian faith and I was at university. And I can remember actually the first question that I ever heard somebody debating was whether married people should use contraception or not. Perhaps there was a view that God should determine how many children they had, and other people, and perhaps that might be the Catholic Church's view, but other people thought that it was fine. So there were two different views. I can remember having a discussion about whether people should give all their money away. Another one about whether people should have pensions or not. Another one about whether people should go to war or not, whether God called people to be soldiers or not. perhaps another one that comes to my mind is about animal testing. Should animals be used to test? Many of these things, there isn't a definitive answer in the Bible. But perhaps, unlike the questions that Don was asking you about which season you prefer, which colour you prefer, the answers do actually matter. And there perhaps is a right answer, but perhaps it's difficult to sometimes discern which way to go. And that's really the subject that I'm mainly going to be talking about this morning, is how we resolve difficult issues that aren't very clear necessarily in the Bible about what we should do. And that's the sort of issues that Paul is being asked about in this letter. So if we turn to the letter, I'm not going to try and follow the text incredibly closely because I think it's complicated. But the issue that they're asking about is whether or not they should eat food sacrificed to idols. And I don't think this is likely to be an issue that you're going to face. But in that culture, in the marketplace, some of the food that they might have bought might have been offered to, as part of the religious customs of that place, it might have been offered as a sacrifice before an idol, before it was put in the marketplace. They might be invited to a public gathering where food was served, and that the food might have been sacrificed to an idol there, and other occasions when this might come up. And when the passage says in verse 1, we all possess knowledge, I think what they're saying is, this is perhaps a quotation from the letter that Paul's been sent. And I think what the letter probably said was, we all have our own views about this. And Paul says that knowledge puffs up. Sometimes we think we're right. We have some knowledge. We know best. And so that's something perhaps we just need to be careful of. But love builds up, and love, as we looked at a few weeks ago, is patient and kind, and that's far more effective than just knowledge. So, what are the two different views that they're coming across? There are two different takes on this. Now, I just want to first of all say that there's a wonderful passage in Isaiah about idols, and I think the picture I get from it is of a tree being brought into a house. It's been cut down in the forest, and somebody is bringing the tree into the house, and they say, right, which bit's holy? Right, well, this bit at the top is holy, so we'll cut that bit off and we'll carve it into an image which you're going to worship. Now, this bit of the tree isn't. We're going to use that as firewood on the fire to keep us warm, and we're going to, we'll burn that bit. Well, really, the picture that's being painted there is that it's complete nonsense to worship part of a tree and turn it into a god, and with the rest of the tree to just use it as firewood. It's clearly, in the eyes of Isaiah in the passage, it's clearly nonsense to worship and carve an image and have an idol of something we've made. And in what Paul is really saying here is that we know that idols are nothing. They aren't gods at all. And we know the knowledge we have is that there is one God who is Father and Son, Jesus Christ. And it doesn't say this, but he's inferring that there's one faith, there's one Lord, there is one church, and it's all about one sacrifice that Jesus made on the cross. And this is what matters. We know that this is what we believe. We know that this is the heart of it. So the one view that is being expressed here about eating food sacrificed to idols, it doesn't really matter, if it's been sacrificed to idols, because idols aren't actually gods. They aren't anything. So it doesn't matter. Just carry on eating whatever, because they aren't gods and you're not worshipping them. But there's another view that says, hang on a minute, we came from a pagan world. We've been converted to this faith, but there are people out there who still believe in this pagan faith. And there are people who've still got one foot in the world and one foot in the new faith, and they are hedging their bets, and they're going, well, we believe in Jesus, but we'll also perhaps keep a foot in the pagan world as well, the world of idols and things. And so there are these two views. And so one is saying it doesn't matter, and the other is saying it does matter. And how Paul advises them and sorts it out is that he says that, if you know that that it doesn't actually matter, that idols are nothing, and so it doesn't matter to you about food sacrificed to idols, but it does matter. There is something more important here, and that is that there may be somebody whose conscience is, as he refers to, weak, who is still putting a foot in the pagan world, in the world of idols, and is still and got one foot in the Christian world and is hedging their bets a bit. But you need to think about them, because if they see you doing this, they'll think you're also doing that. You're also hedging your bets, and that you are not sure about the truth. And so you might cause someone to sin. You might cause someone to go back to idolatry. And also those who haven't yet left idolatry might actually think that Christians are participating in their religion. And so they may not think that there's a need to put their faith in Christ. And so the principle that Paul is outlining here is, it isn't just about what you think and what's good for you. You need to think about the impact on other people of the decisions you make. And so if I give you an example of this, and it might not be the best example, but I know a couple of people who have taken a view on drinking alcohol. Now, personally, I drink alcohol and have nothing against that, and I don't think there is a problem with it. But I do know of one person who actually didn't drink alcohol because of other people who might have a problem with alcoholism and be prone to drink too much, and they thought that as a way of supporting people with that problem, they weren't going to drink alcohol. And some other people I know might, if they were having a meal with somebody who had that sort of problem, they would refrain from doing it so as not to cause unnecessary temptation, if you like, to that person. Now, that's just perhaps one way of expressing that idea that Paul's talking here, and but I think it's really a way of expressing love to others. But I'm guessing that here this morning and online, maybe there are other issues people may have that they're struggling with and they don't know how to resolve. And so I'm going to say that about quite a long time ago, I went to a Bible study where there were a lot of Christians there who had been. It was a group where there were a lot of Christians there who'd been Christians a long time, and they had been, and they were very concerned about the Bible and keeping the Bible and its rules and applying it correctly, and I went along, and on that particular week there was a subject from the Sermon on the Mount that was being discussed, and true to form, these very mature Christians in their faith were discussing it, and they said, yes, that we must do exactly what Jesus says, and this is what's right and wrong, and the world we live in today doesn't take this seriously enough, and I actually I put a slight spanner in the works, because I said, well, what happens if somebody finds themselves in this situation, and these things happen, and to my surprise, the group turned around as to a man more or less and said, well, actually it doesn't apply under those circumstances. Those circumstances aren't outlined in the Bible, but we don't think those circumstances apply. And the effect of that was, for me, that I went away, because actually those circumstances and probably some slightly worse circumstances were in my life at the time, and I had been trying to apply the letter of the passage that they were discussing, and I realized that it took a weight off my shoulders that they didn't apply under my circumstances, and what I've just wanted to, why I've shared that this morning, is because I think sometimes, just like in this passage, this young church has issues, and they are writing to Paul, and Paul is really saying, I'm under authority from God. I am a mature in the faith. I've been appointed by God as an apostle, and by Jesus Christ to help build the church, and he's given me the gift of wisdom, and respect what I have to say, and he's saying that throughout his letters in Corinthians on this subject. He's saying, I can help you. This is the right thing to do, and I think for me, in that circumstance, when I went to that house group, those people helped me to understand a difficult subject that wasn't clearly spelled out in the Bible. And so what I would like to say this morning is, if there are subjects that you have or like that, then please perhaps join a small group if that's and that might be the way in which you get to discuss it wider. There may be it may be that the subjects are sensitive, and in which case perhaps find, if you're a woman, find a woman of mature years who you feel that you can talk to and discuss it with. If you're a man, maybe find a man of mature years who you think you can discuss it with, or a group of men, or whatever. If you think there's something that would lend itself to this a morning service that's perhaps not personal but an issue, then by all means let me know. And if it does seem the sort of thing that we should unwrap morning service, then we can look at that in the future. But just like these people in Corinth were helped to find their way through, I think sometimes we need to discuss things with people, and particularly people who have more we respect, who might be in authority, and I think that's a good way to try and resolve issues that aren't very clear in the Bible. So I hope that helps this morning, and we're going to sing a song and then close this morning. But if there are any subjects, do come and speak to me, or anything's on your mind, speak to someone after the service.